What's going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for watching the show. Wanted to talk to you about our friends over at Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching sports. This app is really easy to use. You just pick more or less on a few player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your cash on a single lineup. Best of all, Prize Picks will give you $50 when you play your first $5 lineup. Win or lose, you'll get $50 for playing. Use the promo code PFF and download the app now. Seahawks are the next draft that we're talking about here at number 18 overall. We weren't sure if they would do it, and they ended up doing what I think was the right thing, taking an interior offensive lineman at number 18, specifically Gray Zabel when he was available. Moving from offensive tackle onto the interior offensive line for the Seahawks, and then in the second round, they traded up for safety Nicky Manwari. Afterwards, John Schneider talked about how they were even having conversations about trading back up into the back part of the first round to go get Nicky Manwari, but they held back and were able to get him with the trade up in the second. Tight end Elijah Arroyo from Miami in the second as well. Third rounder, they took Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe. Fifth round, they had three selections: Riley Mills, Torrey Horton, Robbie Oots. In sixth round, they got Bryce Cabledew, who I think if you move him from tackle onto the inside, I think that you might have a good interior offensive line starter on your hands there. Seventh rounder, Damian Martinez, Mason Richmond, Ricky White. Our staff gave the Seahawks an A for their draft haul. Do you agree with that high praise?
Yeah, I'm in. I think you got two things in this draft. With their first, I'd say with their first 6 picks, you talk about a team that got athletes. This is a crazy level of athletes in this group right here. Gray Zabel, who can play anywhere on the offensive line this year, is Graham Barton. I think that's a big help. Whether he's at center or at guard, they might experiment with it in the preseason, but great pick at 18. They move up to get Eamon Wari. Is he my favorite player? Not necessarily, but they have Julian Love. They have Kobe Bryant. Both those guys can play free safety at some point. Eamon Wari is a freak athlete. I think if there's one of the few defensive coordinators that probably has a really good idea of how to use Eamon Wari, it's Mike McDonald, right? Elijah Arroyo adds a great dimension as a receiving tight end here, a compliment to Noah Fant, to A.J. Barner, now Robbie Oots as well as a blocker. So I think you're building a really good tight end room. I got to be honest, something I've talked to some other people about, Trevor, is Jalen Milroe. I know he fell to the third round, late in the third round, which is, I think, honestly, where he should have gone anyway. I think he went to a great situation for himself, right? When you talk about, okay, he needs a year or two to develop as a passer, as a pocket passer, his footwork, his accuracy, all that stuff. But you could still use him as a weapon in this offense, as a wildcat sort of weapon. You have Sam Darnold. You have Drew Lock as the backup. So Milroe doesn't even have to necessarily worry about, okay, at any point I can come in, because I think Clint Kubiak and Mike McDonald, they would just go to Drew Lock if something happened to Sam Darnold, and Milroe is still there as a weapon. I think it's an ideal situation for him to sit for a year or two and then figure out as we go if he's a starter. Riley Mills, a good athlete on the D-line. Torrey Horton's an awesome pick in the 5th round. He's got blazing speed. And then I look at these late round picks, and I know we're talking about 6th and 7th round picks, but these are all really good system fits. You mentioned Cabledew coming from Kansas, a team that ran a lot of outside zone. What are they going to run in Seattle? A lot of outside zone. Same goes for Mason Richmond coming from Iowa. Look, I didn't watch a ton of Richmond. I watched more of that Iowa crew as a whole. I watched a lot of Connor Colby, but that's what it was this year. Outside zone, get physical inside, and dominate with that scheme, that stretch scheme. Damian Martinez. First of all, just a great value in the 7th round. I thought he could have gone late in the 3rd or the 4th. He's really good. And if you go back to the Oregon State tape, whole lot of outside zone. Like, it all just fits in with this run game. And I'll tell you what, you look at Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, and Damian Martinez, I don't think there's a whole lot of other teams with a better 3 deep at running back than that. That's a really good crew to have those 3 guys. And then with their last pick, I love my guy Ricky White. I think, to me, I like him as a receiver better than you. He's obviously an ace special teamer. Believe he blocked 4 punts last year it was on special teams, as actually he wasn't even their punt returner. He's their best player on UNLV's team, and he was willing to go out there and block punts. So I think Ricky White's just a good guy to have on your football team. But that's what they got to me at the very top. And at positions of need, you got really, really good athletes. And then later on, you found system fits that could make your roster because of what you're looking for, especially what Clint Kubiak is looking for on offense.
As much as I was lower on Nicky Manwari than it felt like a lot of people in consensus were, he was still 26th overall on the Seahawks specific board. And so for you mentioned teams where Nicky Manwari could go to that you'd feel good about, that was one that we identified in the team specific top 100 big boards that we did before the draft. Nicky Manwari was up from, I believe he was 67th overall on just my regular big board, moved him all the way up into almost the top 25 because I could understand Mike McDonald and the Seahawks being very in on a player like this, very similarly to the way that they were able to have that flexibility with Kyle Hamilton. Now, I'm not saying that Nicky Manwari is Kyle Hamilton, but I could see a defensive coach like this using him as that chess piece because he has success doing so before. I agree, man. Zabel is a scheme fit. Cable Du's a scheme fit. Damian Martinez is a scheme fit. I loved all those selections. Loved them taking a chance on Elijah Arroyo, who is a legit big receiver that comes from that tight end spot. I love this spot for Jalen Milroe as well. Zero pressure to start right away at all whatsoever. He gets this first year as basically a redshirt year. He's basically just honing in on his technique, making sure that he is more accurate and more consistent. And then maybe 2026, but most likely it would probably be 2027 before we end up seeing it. And that's obviously in best case scenario if Sam Darnold ends up playing well. If Sam Darnold doesn't play well, you know how it goes. We'll get Jalen Milroe a lot sooner. But at least he's in a situation where he does not have to worry about starting right away. They're not depending on him right away. Sam Darnold is going to be the initial starting quarterback for this team. And so there's no pressure there on Milroe, who just gets to sit back and get more consistent. So I love that. Riley Mills, Torrey Horton, Robbie Utes, I like those fits for them as well. And then you mentioned, I wasn't the biggest fan of Ricky White just as an overall wide receiver prospect. I don't know how many difference-making traits he has coming to the NFL, but certainly as a special teams guy drafted in the 7th round, I'm in, 100% in. I feel like Ricky White could have been drafted closer to the 5th, and they get him in the 7th. And I think that even for his special teams work alone, that is worth it for this team. So Seahawks, a lot of identity fits, a lot of good talent players, a lot of good bets to make. I think they did an excellent job here in this draft.
I just love the stamp through this offseason, including getting Sam Darnold, that Clint Kubiak has put on this offense. And you consider, look, they lost Geno Smith, they lost DK Metcalf, they lost Tyler Lockett. This was essentially outside of Smith and Jigba. That was the offense the last 3 years, right? And you go, okay, they're going to have this whole new identity, but I think Kubiak and this staff have gone in there and just clearly laid out the vision of what they want this offense to look like. Now, again, we still have questions. We're going to have some competitions on the inside at offensive line, but I think you clearly see where they want to go. I think we should be looking at Seattle a lot more optimistic than we did when all those trades were going down 3 months ago.